Welcome back to the Point and Quest podcast, where point and click meets storytelling, puzzles, and the heart of adventure gaming. I'm your host, Lindsay, or Pixelated Linz, and today we're journeying into the dark, twisted forests of Mordavia, to a world of shadows, monsters, and far too many tentacles. That's right, today we're talking about Quest for Glory, Shadows of Darkness. This week's Pixel Pick is no other than Quest for Glory, Shadows of Darkness. Now, I know, some of you have probably made this trip before, maybe more than once. But for the uninitiated, buckle up. Shadows of Darkness is by far one of the most captivating and eerie entries in the Quest for Glory series. And it's my absolute favorite, so I'm excited to dig in. But before we step into the mist, let's back up. We need to talk about the origin of this game and the unique space it occupies in the world of Sierra Adventures. For those unfamiliar, the Quest for Glory series was the brainchild of Lori Ann and Corey Cole, a wife and husband team and two absolute legends in the adventure gaming world. The series started out as Heroes Quest back in 1989, but for legal reasons, because, board games, it had to change its name to Quest for Glory. From the very beginning, these games were different. They weren't just point-and-click adventures. They were a blend of role-playing, elements, and humor filled with puns, a pinch of danger, and a whole lot of heart. And here's something you might not know. The Quest for Glory series was originally planned as a tetralogy. 4 games, 4 cardinal directions, 4 elements, 4 seasons, and 4 realms of mythology. The idea was to take the hero on a journey through these cycles, each game representing a stage of growth, a change in the world, and a deeper dive into the mythological worlds. So You Want to Be a Hero, the first game, was all about the North, Earth, and spring. It featured Germanic mythology, and this was the hero's first foray into the world, young, fresh, like the springtime itself. Then came Trial by Fire, the Southern game, with its blazing summer heat and the Middle Eastern mythology. This was fire, passion, and the heat of experience. Originally, the third game was supposed to be Shadows of Darkness. It was set in the East, with air as its element, fall as its season, and Slavic mythology creating this eerie, unsettling, yet adorable and cozy atmosphere. But here's where things get interesting. The creators realized something. The hero just wasn't ready. Going straight from the sun-scorched streets of Shapir to the haunted forests of Mordavia would be too much of a leap. So they created a bridge, Wages of War. That 5th game was an unexpected addition necessary to ease the player and the hero into the dark, foreboding world of Shadows of Darkness. In a way, it marked a turning point for the series and for the hero. The seasons, the elements, they weren't just there for aesthetic purposes. They symbolized the hero's own journey, their maturation, the process of becoming someone capable of taking on the gravest of dangers. By the time you get to Shadows of Darkness, you're facing a harsh reality. The hero, once buoyed by friends and sanctuary, is now alone in a world that doesn't trust them. It's a dramatic shift from the earlier games. Corey and Lori even talk about how the player would immediately be thrown into opposition, with no safe place to retreat and no one to trust. By the time Shadows of Darkness came along in 1993, the Coles were at the top of their game. Set in the fictional land of Mordavia, this game marks a departure from the sunny, adventure-laden settings of earlier entries. Suddenly, we're plunged into a creepy, Lovecraftian landscape, filled with dark forests, evil wizards, and vampires, not to mention creatures that definitely wouldn't look out of place in a Bruce Campbell movie. But what really made Shadows of Darkness stand out for me was how much it didn't feel like a traditional fantasy game. It pulled in elements of horror, Dracula-inspired gothic horror, Cthulhu-esque mythos, and a touch of Eastern European folklore that was all very well researched, like most of the Sierra games. All while maintaining the quirky, humorous style that makes Quest for Glory so charming. It's like being dumped into a midnight movie marathon where everything's just a little off-kilter, a little unsettling, and oh yeah, there's also the chance of becoming the hero that Mordavia so desperately needs. Choosing your class. But what kind of hero are you? One of the genius mechanics of Quest for Glory was its RPG element. At the beginning, you get to choose your class: fighter, magic user, thief, or, if you've played your cards right, a paladin. For Shadows of Darkness, the choice becomes even more significant. Who needs astrology? Just tell me what class you choose, and I bet I can glean a little something from that information. So let's break it down. If you play a fighter, you're the tough, no-nonsense, direct type who solves problems with brute force and a sword. But here in Mordavia, being a fighter isn't just about hacking and slashing. You've got monsters like wraiths, verns that require more than just muscle. Sometimes you've got to think on your feet. Or run. Running's always a valid option. Then there's the magic user. And let me tell you, if you're playing as a wizard in Mordavia, you're going to have a field day. This is a world dripping in dark magic. Want to levitate across a chasm? You've got a spell for that. Want to zap a necromancer? Well, you've got a spell for that too. But my personal favorite class? The rogue. Being a thief in Mordavia isn't just about stealing, though you can and will do plenty of that. You're sneaky. You've got acrobatics on your side. And there's something so satisfying about breaking into houses in the dead of night. I mean, like in-game, of course. You'll even find an old thieves guild hidden in Mordavia, complete with its own puzzles and traps. It's like lore within lore. But here's where the real magic of Shadows of Darkness lies. It's not just about who you play, but how you play. The game is packed with puzzles, classic Sierra-style ones, too. You know the ones I'm talking about. The ones where you're not entirely sure if the game's messing with you or if you've missed something crucial 2 saves ago. But that's what makes it fun, right? Right? There's a puzzle involving a certain Rusalka, a tragic water spirit, and depending on your choices, you can help her find peace or, leave her cursed forever. Then there's the combat. Sierra's combat system was never its strongest suit, but here it's got kind of a scrappy charm. Monsters in the woods, wraiths, necrotors, they'll test your reflexes, especially if you're playing as a fighter. The thief and magic user can find clever ways around combat, but sometimes it's just you and your weapon against the darkness. And now for click-worthy characters. Let's talk about the people of Mordavia. Or, the creatures of Mordavia. Because Shadows of Darkness gives us some of the most memorable characters of the entire series. First up, Katrina. Katrina. The mysterious, beautiful woman who's way too interested in your hero for seemingly no reason. Spoiler, she's a vampire. And not just any vampire, but a powerful necromancer who's actually kind of tragic. There's a surprising depth to her character. She's not all evil. She genuinely seems to want to save Mordavia. And depending on your choices, she could end up being an ally or, well, not. Ad Avis. If you've played earlier Quest for Glory games, you'll recognize this name. Ad Avis is a recurring villain. A wizard who's bent on becoming immortal. His plans? Not exactly altruistic. He's a master manipulator, and his connection to Katrina makes for an interesting power dynamic. Plus, he's got that classic villain vibe, one part arrogant, two parts sinister. Baba Yaga, oh yes. She makes a return, which is perfect considering the Slavic folklore element of this. Baba Yaga, we met in the first Quest for Glory game. She's back, and she's more ridiculous than ever. She lives in a hut that walks on chicken legs, classic Baba Yaga, and her brand of malevolent magic comes with a side of puns. It's absurd, it's bizarre, and it's exactly what we love about these games. The Rusalka, a haunting character who symbolizes tragedy more than villainy. The Rusalka is the Lady of the Lake, or a water spirit, trapped in a cursed existence after being drowned. And yes, you can use your thief skills to steal from her, but really, the emotional core of her story is heartbreaking. Dr. Cranium, the game's comedic relief. Dr. Cranium is a parody of Dr. Frankenstein, complete with the lightning bolts and eccentric experiments. He's not quite mad, but definitely zany. His puzzles are some of the more fun, offbeat parts of the game. The Burgermeister, a classic authority figure. He's the village mayor who's just trying to keep things together while the undead rise, monsters roam the forest, and strangers like you show up asking far too many questions. And my personal favorite, Olga, vegetarian chef extraordinaire. I've actually made her avocado and roasted garlic sandwich, and it does not disappoint. So what is the plot of Shadows of Darkness? Well, like any good RPG, it starts with you waking up in an unfamiliar land. In this case, you've been summoned to Mordavia, not knowing how or why. As you explore, you realize the town is on the brink of disaster. Strange disappearances, monsters creeping closer, and an ancient evil threatening to rise again. Oh, and did I mention the Dark One? Yeah, there's an ancient eldritch horror named Avuzul, the Dark One who's been sealed away for centuries. But as you'll quickly learn, cultists are trying to bring him back. Your job, of course, is to stop them. Along the way, you'll uncover secrets about the land, the characters, and your role in all of this. It's classic hero stuff, but with a quest for glory twist. And depending on how you play, your class, your decisions, the ending can play out in a few different ways. Maybe you end up defeating Avuzul and saving Mordavia. Maybe you unlock a secret romance with Katrina. Or maybe you just ride off into the sunset a hero once more. Conclusion: why Shadows of Darkness stands the test of time. Here's the thing about Shadows of Darkness. It's not just a game. It's a moment in time. A beautifully strange mix of gothic horror, comedy, and RPG mechanics that's still fun to play nearly 30 years later. Yes, the graphics are dated. Yes, the combat's a little clunky, but the story, the characters, the feeling of exploring Mordavia, that's timeless. So whether you're a seasoned adventurer or new to the series, I hope today's journey into the shadows has given you a fresh appreciation for this game. And as always, this has been the Point & Quest podcast. I'm Lindsay, and remember, when in doubt, save often, especially if you're about to fight a wraith.